Hello, everybody. It's Marci from wavesofcommunication.com. Welcome to another episode of the Language Facilitation Helpline podcast, and thank you for tuning in today. Every action you take to help the late talkers in your life is important, that the fastest results come when you enjoy the process of language facilitation. Hello, everybody. It's Marci from wavesofcommunication.com. I am here with Jen, and I asked her to join me. We met in one of my podcast collab groups because she's trying to share her message. I'm trying to share my message. And I know so many of you out there have heard me talk about ABA and working with your BCBA and all of that. And I know that not every BCBA is open to working with parents, but I know Jen is, because Jen has a ton of background, including the fact that she is a mom of a late talking child who's now 12. Did I understand?
Yes, he is 12.
Amazing. So what I would like to do is start with you sharing your story, how you went from Jen, the mom of a late talking kid, to Jen, who is running a consulting company and has services for parents.
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to everyone. My story started many, many years ago, and I was actually teaching. And I was in a school system teaching special education, but I found that I really wanted to ask the kids about their day, about their home life, about what could I help them with? What did they need supports with socially, emotionally? So I went and I pursued a master's of social work, and I became a licensed social worker. And there I practiced for several years as a social worker. This is all prior to being a mom. And I worked with a variety of different kids from kindergarten through sixth grade at the time. And they had diagnoses, mental health diagnoses, behavioral situations going on. And so we worked through those situations. So I had a daughter, and then I had my son a year later. My kids are a year apart, and my daughter literally came out of the womb talking. So I think that's what I was expecting. I was expecting full sentences by 2. I was expecting pronouns and adjectives and all the colorful language. And my son was a child of very little words. And I remember taking him to the doctor, and the doctor was like, no, he's fine. So I was like, okay. Well, time goes on, and he's still not anywhere near where she was. I brought him back to the doctor again for a checkup. It wasn't overly concerning, but, he asked a question, and my daughter did answer, and his reasoning was, oh, see, somebody's answering for him, which I didn't know what to believe at the time, because as a parent, you're like, I don't know if that's right. And you want your child to progress, but you don't want to push them into progressing before their time. So I did keep an eye on it, but then I really had to put the work into having my daughter maybe not be in the room and model the speech for him, make sure that he was answering questions. I found out later on he is tongue-tied, so that played a little bit of a part. And he has a lisp that I actually didn't even pick up on until a few years ago. So it was all these minor things for me through the course of having my children, staying home, trying to work on all the things that they needed to work on to be successful little individuals. I found that I really enjoyed modifying situations and environments so that they could learn and grow to the best of their abilities. I went back to become a Board Certified Behavior Analyst, and now I practice as a BCBA and a social worker, and I marry the two practices together because I don't think that any practice should be cookie cutter and there's no one size fits all for parents or for kids.
Yeah, so we love that. Obviously, that's why you're here, because we know everybody needs something a little bit differently on the Waves of Communication page. And the reason that kids are late talking is very different but they all show behavior instead of speech because they don't have speech. So they use something else to communicate. And what I love about marrying social work with the behavior analyst role is you automatically, intuitively are looking beyond the behaviors to the communication that's behind them. It's probably instinctive
100%.
for you, right?
100%. And one of my biggest things that I say whether I'm working with staff or training parents or working with kids is that I look at behavior as communication. And so when we stop and we look at behavior as communication, then we can see what is the child communicating effectively and what is the child communicating ineffectively. And so a lot of times in the BCBA world, if we're writing reports or talking about behavior, we'll say, oh, this child's having blah, blah, blah problem behavior. And I don't call it that. I call it effective or ineffective behavior.
Great.
Because what is that child trying to tell us?
I love that, because remember, effective behavior, and if you call behavior communication, is effective communication. When I point at something, you know
100%.
what I'm pointing at. I understand what it is. You and I are on the same page. But if I'm just like, screaming,
Right.
that's not effective.
Absolutely
You
not.
can't know what I mean. It doesn't really communicate a message. You have to get that, calm down. You have to get that regulated, right? We talk about that in order to get to the message behind it, because this is just the only message is I'm upset and I can't listen and I can't work right now, right?
Absolutely. And even with my own son, through my course and through other ways I work with people, I give a lot of examples of with him when he was younger and starting out, he had a lot of what we call meltdowns, for lack of better words, and it was his way of telling, like, he was frustrated. Something was too hard. He couldn't handle the sensory overload at the time, possibly. So then I had to really look to see, like, why is this occurring? And when we start to look at all people as a whole, their family environment, their daily environment, things, their likes, their dislikes, then we can start to effectively look at how to help them in all aspects, communication, behavior, functionally across the board.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's what's so great about the analyst role in the BCBA situation, especially as a social worker, because that's an analyst job too. I mean, you're always sort of figuring out or even helping people figure out, because I think when people feel big feelings or they're triggered by, you said, environmental things, people picking on them or even their feelings, so many of these kids have feelings of inadequacy because they can't communicate the same way their peers do. And so they behave with anxious behaviors. And if those behaviors are judged as problems, like you said, instead of, a real communication of need for help, right? That's a request. It's a cry for help when a child is looking anxious instead of, saying that that's a problem because it doesn't look like other kids. So I love that about it. So what the real reason, we talked about this right before the interview, the secret reason that I invited you to join me is because I really want to equip my audience. I want to help them work with their BCBAs, because we talked about how not every BCBA is open to communicating with the family about what they do. And a lot of the people ask me, how do I help my BCBA learn about what I'm doing? I'm doing just natural language facilitation. I'm not prompting anything. I'm not facilitating. I'm really not doing any. I'm just modeling things and hoping that the lay talker is going to pick it up. I'm not really depending or collecting data at my stage of the process. How can I work with. That's what we really want here, is a team relationship with the BCBA, because it's better for the BCBA too, right? When they communicate with the parent, like if you know what's working in a family's life, then you can help them. But I think parents have a hard time because that's not a typical relationship, right? In the BCBA, ABA world, I think it's less common for a BCBA to be open, and so how do we work with that? How do people work with their BCBA to get them to work together?
So that's actually a really great question. And even as a BCBA, I have worked with other BCBAs who are less collaborative, less open to having different philosophies. We've woven into the BCBA philosophy. And so, but going back, first, when working with parents, they steer the ship. They are the driver of that ship. They are the captain. They steer the whole entire vessel. And so going into it with that mindset as a parent, like, this has to work for our family. This has to work for my child. And ask the questions. It's okay to ask questions of whoever is working with you and your family, whether it's in your home, in a center, in a school, and ask the questions about their beliefs. Let them know a little bit about yours and see if those things align. Everything has to be doable. And again, we did talk about this a little bit, but even if you go to a doctor and they just tell you, do this, without listening, without taking in your philosophy or beliefs into a situation and just prescribe something, you don't really get anywhere.
Right. So the first thing is you have a choice in providers. There are, fortunately, lots of choices of BCBAs, and
100%.
You run into a brick wall at that point. When you're trying to communicate and you're getting a lack of response, it's okay to say, no, thank you, I'd like to have another provider.
100%, just like you would with a doctor, or say you go to one hospital, you don't like that, you go to a different one, in any field, the medical field. But this especially, because you are going to be working with someone over a long period of time.
That's right.
And it's like a therapist. If you go to get counseling or speak with someone, you really have to have that connection, and you have to feel supported and heard. And if a BCBA isn't doing that, if they're not supporting you, if they're not taking your feelings and desires into consideration, then they're not a fit for you.
We know there are many, many wonderful BCBAs out there, and there are maybe people who are new and they're not open to new ideas and that kind of thing, but they might be. If you as a parent say, are you willing, are you open, and you get somebody who says, yes, let's talk, let's listen in what we do, what kinds of things would help you or any BCBA shift the prompt-based, exchange-based programs of ABA into a more natural modeling situation? What kind of suggestions might you offer to help marry those two?
So again, you have amazing questions, because this is all such useful information, and they're things that parents can do right away with their children. Yeah. So if you have, again, you said modeling, huge fan of modeling. And so what you put out, what you show your child, even what you expose them to on TV, on YouTube, on different platforms, they're going to model back. And even if you don't think that they're aware of what's going on or that they're taking it in, children are such sponges, and you'll find out later on that they actually are paying full attention to what's going on in the background. So modeling is an amazing technique. The other thing is child-led learning. So you catch the child in the moment doing what they're doing, and then you can expand on that. So if you see a child who's playing with a car, zoom, zoom, you can play with them, engage with them, make it fun, make learning interesting. And expand on their vocabulary in that moment, expand on what they're learning in those moments.
Right. And what we always teach is your role. There are therapists that are really trying to pull things out and really facilitate those expressions. But in your time, you're just letting them practice, right? All the things that
Absolutely.
they learn in their lessons and stuff. At home, you want to give them natural examples of the kinds of things that they learned. Now, I have this question that I know a lot of parents are going to ask. So what happens if, because it used to happen to me, I'd go to the house and the kid might play just fine with me because I was new and I had toys, or, I had stuff in a bag or whatever, but they don't want to do the same thing with mom and dad. They don't want, what do you say to a mom and dad who tries to be like the therapist and the kid doesn't respond?
So one of the things that I actually like to do is, again, follow the child's lead. Sometimes just being next to them. Maybe your child wants you to sit there and watch them play, and then follow their lead. So if they're not talking to you and they're playing along, there are different things that you can do. You can model how you might play. That's, parallel play with them.
Yeah.
Or if they begin engaging, then you pick up on where they're at. So you want to find out where they are, meet them at that level, and baby steps into the situation.
Exactly the same kinds of things that I tell parents to do, because again, these are the kinds of things. What's exciting to me is that I know that there are other BCBAs that are recommending the same things, because
Absolutely.
these are not rocket science. This isn't brand spanking new exciting modeling. Kids have been learning from their parents forever and ever. But what happens so much, and this is the other thing that we talked about, is that natural process of parents talking and kids learning, that we think we make it sound real easy, when we talk about it here, but there are blockages that happen to this process. And sometimes they're physiological, like you talked about your son's tongue tie, or kids who have ear infections, or real diagnoses, autism, CP, things like that. But then there are kids that are showing these behaviors and late talking and development just from environmental blockages or mindset, worry, fear, those kinds of things. What kinds of environmental and mindset advices, I guess I could say, as you're evaluating and analyzing kids, that you see that you usually use advice with parents to help them with these blockages?
So easy to get discouraged, because as parents, I know we all try extremely hard. We all try our best. We all want the best for our kids. And when things don't happen quickly, sometimes that becomes discouraging. So with parents, I explain a lot of times, definitely the first time, but then also as reminders of it takes time, and it's not going to happen overnight, and you just keep plugging away. Repetition is huge.
Consistency, right? Consistency.
Absolutely. Being consistent, applying the tools. You can't just say, oh, I did this for 2 weeks and nothing's happening, and then expect a miracle change within those 2 weeks. Sometimes learners take longer than other learners. So I am a huge fan of the word yet. My child isn't talking yet.
That's why we call them all late talkers. Even if they have a physiological thing going on, or an environmental thing, or whatever going on, they just haven't got to that point where the blockages are all gone, the learning is all popping, everything's going. And then it's not linear, right? It doesn't always happen straight up like this. That's why we call it waves of communication, because there's lots of ups and downs. Now, I love how you said don't get discouraged when you get down. it's all about when you're in that down point. This is where I want you to kind of pull out your social work hat. So if you've got a mom that's in that down thing and she's had meltdowns increasing or behavior starting to change, that you kind of don't know where this is coming from, what would you advise a parent like that to do?
So I always say, stop and take a breath, give it a little space, and think about what went on in the situation. So we always want to look for the why. Why are these things occurring? Why is the behavior happening? Why are we having a lull in growth? Why did we regress a little? And again, sometimes these things just happen. Maybe your child didn't have a good couple nights of sleep. So then you can say, oh, I had a couple of days where this was really rough, and then you get back on track. Maybe it's a little longer, and you need to look to see what's happening, what's changed.
Yeah. And this is the real conversation you need to have with your BCBA, right?
100%. 100%. And they should be there to guide you and support you and to tell you the different steps to take along the way.
Yeah, I love it. Well, that is what we want, for parents to find a connection. If you have ABA services available to you, I don't want you to say, no, I don't want them because Marci said ABA is bad. We want to figure out how to let people work with ABA and make it work well for you. So, as usual on my podcast, I ask my guests which one or multiple of my Waves of Communication resources did you find helpful, either for you with your kid or that you might use as, recommendations for people who you work with?
So I actually have a few.
Oh.
And when you say, instead of saying I want and teaching the I want, and asking, like teaching to say I need help, or other phrases that I need, things like that, rather than I want, is huge. Because even working with children as a BCBA, it's one of the first things that we learn to do from other SLPs.
Yeah.
We learn to say, and when you have like the PECs or anything really, it's I want. And we even prompt I, and we expect this child to say want and then fill it in.
Yeah.
And so I thought that it was an amazing tool to just think about. Don't do that, and learn and teach through modeling and play. And that's huge.
Yeah, and if the behavior, like you said, if you're looking at that behavior, meaning I love this, right? Because their face is showing delight and they're smiling while they're eating it, whatever. That's a very valuable and super fun thing to learn to say, right? It's motivating for a kid. And things don't have to be just fun to be motivating. Useful is also motivating. So I need help is a big, important thing for kids to learn. So I appreciate that. So that video is all about what to teach your kids instead of I want. So, okay, amazing. What else about Waves of Communication?
So one of the other things, the other videos, was on mindset. And that really resonated with me. And as a professional, I preach that all the time. But as a parent, sometimes I forget myself to use the tools that I am teaching others in my own house or with my own children, or even for me to say, it's okay, I'm going to take a break, or I need this, or even the yet. So my son is very, very disorganized. He hasn't mastered that yet. Yeah. And I can get overwhelmed thinking about the future for him. How is he going to manage these things? Then, it's using the mindset tools that you talk about that were really helpful.
Yeah, it sort of helps you keep your energy focused on something that is productive, right? Instead of unproductive or useful or, like you said, efficient versus not efficient, and I love that. So that's great because that's something that I love too. And again, I think that your role as a BCBA and anybody who's working with a BCBA, you naturally empower your clients that way. But we all need someone to remind us that without taking care of ourselves and our needs, we can't take care of other kids and other people and do our jobs and be good at it and be happy. Otherwise, we're just all suffering. So mindset is key. So I really appreciate that.
Your workbook, we did just talk about that, I thought was amazing. And I love that the tools are versatile in your workbook so that you can use them if you're a parent, you can use them if you're a professional, and you can really generalize them across a ton of settings. So I thought your workbook is very handy and full of really good information.
Excellent. Well, I appreciate that you appreciate it too. And I hope you'll use it, recommend it to other people. Now it's
Absolutely.
on Kindle, so you can get it just in your pocket to have those levels handy. I think they're really helpful to explain to parents. Like if you're at this low level of connection, your kiddo's not going to listen to you. But if you, give them more attractive stuff to listen to, you'll move them up. And it's really handy, conscious. And when you're thinking about things and you're disconnected, you don't realize that so much. All right. Now, I know that you have been busy. The other point that you're here with me today is because you have been busy developing your own resources. Please share with our audience what you've been working on and how your resources can help them.
Oh, thank you so much. So I have been working on a website, and my website is jeniferbena.com. And I created a course to help parents navigate the special education school system and how to find cohesion at home.
That's amazing. And I'll tell you what, this is the mind behind it. Jen is the mind behind it. So you know that it's somebody who's intuitive and connected with people and understands it from a social work standpoint.
Also do private one-to-one parent coaching for anything, behavior needs, supports at home. And I also do school advocacy because a lot of times schools aren't always transparent with the services that they offer or that your child is entitled to. And I like to make sure that kids get what they need.
Well, that's wonderful. So people all across the U.S. who are in ABA, you're getting it for free. You're getting it through resources. You're getting it. However, if you're struggling with it, this could be worth its weight in gold for you, because now you've got a way to maximize and take advantage of services that you're getting and how to find the right ABA center wherever you live and all of that stuff. I know that you'll get everything you need about this because, like I said, I don't want to bash ABA if it's going to help people. And if they get good BCBAs like you, I know they're going to get great help. So thank you, Jen, for joining me. I want to encourage everybody out there to take advantage of all these resources. Watch the videos that Jen told you about. They're super good on the channel. Get the workbook. Go get the course. It's all about you taking action, everybody. So thanks again for watching, and we'll see you all on the next video. Bye for now. Thanks for tuning in today. With a whole range of Waves of Communication resources, from free content to customized coaching, you now have access to everything you need to elevate spoken language to infinite success. You are welcome to get your journey started with my 11-week language facilitation Journey to Speech workbook. This tool is helping parents worldwide create nonstop language facilitation opportunities that elevate spoken language beyond even their own expectations. You can access this workbook and all of the language facilitation resources on my website, wavesofcommunication.com.